So I'm going to combine now the next couple of questions we've got because Abby wanted to know about the subject matters and events that you draw your inspiration and influence from, and Viraj was wanting to know about your motivation and also whether you got inspiration from your personal life.
Okay. I did get, if I start with the inspiration from my personal life, because yeah, that's definitely true. It's always been a bit of a dream. I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but it's always been a dream to make a game. Originally, I think I wanted to make a video game, but I'm hugely passionate about board games, and I've really fallen in love with board games over the past few years. So I see that as being, my future, hopefully. I've always been interested in it. I've always found the topic fascinating, and it's sort of bled into other things that I've been doing. So, for example, I studied design when I was in university, and for my final year project, what I decided to do, we could do virtually anything we wanted to do, so long as it was related to design in some way, shape, or form. I wanted to create a design document for a fictional video game. And this was back in 2001, I think it was, or maybe it's 2002. I was just really intrigued. Video games in particular, they require an enormous level of collaboration between huge teams of people. And, the act of putting that together is just mind blowing, really, when you think about it. And so I looked into how that was done and kind of came across the idea of the game design document, and I wanted to write one of those up. And I actually got in touch with George R. R. Martin before he just became like this huge global superstar. He and I asked him, as a huge fan of his books, and would he mind if I set this game and it's like, in his world and so on. And he said, he got back to me and he was like, yeah, it's fine, but don't actually create the game, because I'm in talks to have a game made. So that was quite cool. But yeah, so there was one example. I created a game design document. Then a few years later, I actually retrained and became a teacher for a while. And during my PGCE, for my essay, was it dissertation? I can't remember. I chose to write about extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation, and how games can be used to intrinsically motivate children to improve their learning. And that was an area that I found really interesting. And so any opportunity I've had to choose a topic to study, I've kept coming back to games. So when I got the opportunity to do this, it felt quite natural. I never thought that I would actually get a chance to do it, and the inspiration was, I read about Adam Pootz's story, who created Kingdom Death Monster, and how essentially he was just another guy, and he had this idea and this vision, and he used Kickstarter to fund it, and he's now one of the most successful board game designers in the world. And I think that story to me was hugely inspiring, and so that's what made me think maybe there is a way for me to do this, and that's what kickstarted the entire process. So that's so certainly from a personal level, I've taken huge inspiration from a variety of places. In terms of inspiration for the game, I mentioned earlier that this is a love letter to Gothic horror, vampires, and all that kind of stuff, hammer horror. All that stuff is it's a topic that I'm really passionate about and that I enjoy, and it's content that I consume from choice and have done for years and years. So I take inspiration from the stuff that I love and that I enjoy. And obviously, when working on Damnation, the Gothic game, I've tightened that circle a little bit so that it's focused purely on stuff that makes sense in that world. Things like films have influenced me. Things like Blood on Satan's Claw, The Witchfinder General, Wicker Man, all the hammer horror stuff. Dracula from 1992, with Gary Oldman in it, all of that kind of stuff. I've taken inspiration from books, Dracula the book, stuff like Flashman, those novels, some Cormac McCarthy stuff. I've also taken inspiration from video games. So, for example, the roguelike games that I mentioned earlier. So we have a mechanic in this game that when you are eliminated, this is an optional one, you can flip over your character sheet and you can essentially haunt the game as a ghost. You can do various things to influence matters. And that was inspired directly by a video game called Haunt. No, it wasn't called Haunt, I'm sorry. It's called Crawl. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. It's really cool. And the art style for it is incredible as well. Check out the trailer for Crawl. It's really, really good. So all sorts of sources, but the one thing they all have in common is that they're things that I enjoy and things that I love.
Yeah, just like Benji's point earlier about it being a passion project and how important that is, because that is a motivating driving force, certainly.
Human beings are sponges for creativity and for ideas, and it's about being true to yourself and finding what is soaked in your sponge and putting that out into the world.